Okay, girls and guys, this is the one and only Ivan Read Aloud with Miss Matthews. Today we are on lesson 9, okay? So those of you who are reading or were in class earlier today, we talked about the different moods, right? Our learning target. I can describe the moods of different events in the story and use colors to represent those moods. So those are moods that people are feeling based on something that happens to them in the story. If we scroll up to our next slide, okay, we see that there are different colorful splashes, and those are talking about different moods, okay? In a story, mood refers to the emotions and feelings that the author is trying to communicate to the reader through the characters and events. Last assignment, we talked about the feelings and emotions that the characters were having, okay? So this is a little bit more into that. We often associate different colors with different moods. Here are some mood colors. We've got anger or warning, death and evil, which is black, peaceful, which is blue, like a calming color. Gloomy and sad can often be gray. Royalty is a sign of purple. Remember, we discussed that when we talked about the cloak that Dwayne Wade's mother gave him, right? That purple color symbolized royalty. Energy and creativity is yellow, like I've got a bright idea, right? And greed or jealousy. Greed would be concerned with money. That gives you the green, okay? And anger, we talked about that. That's like you're red in the face. So we're going to think about the different colors, okay, that you have. The only vocabulary word for this today is glints. And that is reflects small flashes of light. You might get a glint of something, a little piece of something. So usually it's associated with light. So our first chapter today is colors. Julia opens the metal box. I see a row of little squares, green, blue, red, black, yellow, purple, orange. The colors seem to glow. She pulls out a brush with a thin tuft of a tail at its end. She dips the brush in water and wets the paper, then taps at the red square. When the brush meets the damp paper, pink petals of color unfurl like morning flowers. I can't take my eyes off that magical brush. For a moment, I'm not thinking about Ruby and Mac and the claw stick and Stella. Almost. Julia touches the red again, then blue, and there, suddenly, is the purple of a ripe grape. She touches the blue, and her paper turns to summer sky, black and white, and now I see that she is painting a picture of Ruby. I can make out her floppy ears and her thick legs. Julia stops painting. She takes a few steps back, hands on her hips, gazing at her work. She scowls. It's not right, she says. She glances over her shoulder at me. I try to look encouraging. Julia starts to crumple up the paper, then reconsiders. Instead, she slides it into my cage at the spot where my glass is broken. Here you go, she says, a Julia original. That'll be worth millions someday. Gingerly, I pick up the paper. I do not eat a single bite of it. Oh, hey, I almost forgot. Julia runs to her backpack. She pulls out 3 plastic jars, one yellow, one blue, one red. She opens the jars and an odd, not food smell hits my nose. Julia pushes the jars one by one through the opening. Then she slides some paper through. These are called finger paints, she says. My aunt gave them to me, but really, I'm too old for finger painting. I stick a finger into the red jar. The paint is thick as mud. It's cool and smooth, like bananas underfoot. I pop my finger into my mouth. It's not exactly a ripe mango, but it's not bad. Julia laughs. You don't eat it. You paint with it. She grabs a piece of paper and presses her finger on it. See? Like this. I place my finger on a piece of paper. I lift it, and a red mark is there. I get a bigger glob from the pot, and slap my hand down on the page. When I pull off my hand at the paper, its red twin stays behind. This isn't like the ghostly handprints on my glass, the ones my visitors leave behind. This handprint can't be so easily wiped away. So he discovers how to use the paint, different from the markers. A bad dream. I lie awake, peeling dried red paint off my fingertips. Bob, who accidentally walked on one of my paintings, is licking his red paws. Every so often I glance over at the empty ring. The claw stick glints in the moonlight. Stop! No! Ruby's frantic cries startle me. Ruby? I call. You're having a bad dream. You're okay. You're safe. Where's Stella? She asks, gulping for air. Before I can answer, she says, Never mind. I remember now. Go back to sleep, Ruby, I say. You've had a hard day. I can't go back to sleep, she says. I'm afraid I'll have the same dream. There was a sharp stick in it, and it hurt. I look at Bob, and he looks back at me. Oh, Ruby says. Oh, Mac. She puts her trunk between the bars. Do you think... She hesitates. Do you think Mac is mad because I hurt him today? I consider lying, but gorillas are terrible liars. Probably, I finally say. He ran away after that, Ruby says. Bob gives a scornful laugh. Crawled away is more like it. We are quiet for a while. Branches claw at the roof. A light rain drums. One of the parrot murmurs something in her sleep. Ruby breaks the silence. Ivan? I smell something funny. He can't help it, Bob says. I believe she's referring to the finger paints Julia gave me, I say. What are finger paints? Ruby asks. You make pictures with them, I explain. Could you make a picture of me? Maybe someday. I remember Julia's picture, the one that will be worth $1 million. I hold it up to the glass. Look, it's you. Julia made it. It's hard to see, Ruby says. There's not much moonlight. Why do I have 2 trunks? I examine the picture. Those are feet. Why do I have 2 feet? That's called artistic license, Bob says. Ruby sighs. Could you tell me another story? She asks. I don't think I can ever go back to sleep. I told you all I remember, I say with a helpless shrug. Then tell me a new story, she says. Make something up. I try to think, but my thoughts keep returning to Mac and his claw stick. Anything yet? Ruby asks. I'm working on it. Ivan, Ruby presses. Bob said you were going to save me. I search for true words. I'm working on that too. Ivan, Ruby says in a voice so low I can barely hear her. I have another question. I can tell from the sound of her voice that this will be a question I don't want to answer. Ruby taps her trunk against the rusty iron bars of her door. Do you think, she asks, that I'll die in this domain someday? Like Aunt Stella? Once again, I consider lying, but when I look at Ruby, the half-formed words just die in my throat. Not if I can help it, I say instead. I feel something tighten in my chest, something dark and hot, and it's not a domain, I added. I pause, and then I say it. It's a cage. So Ivan's feelings about where he lives are changing. He used to call it a domain, which is more like a home, and now he considers it a cage. The story. I look at the ring, layered with fresh sawdust. I look at the skylight, at the half-hidden moon. I just thought of a story, I say. Is it a made-up story or a true one? Ruby asks. True, I say. I hope. Ruby leans against the bars. Her eyes hold the pale moon in them, the way a still pond holds stars. Once upon a time, I say, there was a baby elephant. She was smart and brave, and she needed to go to a place called a zoo. What's a zoo? Ruby asks. A zoo, Ruby, is a place where humans make amends. A good zoo is a place where humans care for animals and keep them safe. Did the baby elephant go to the zoo? Ruby asks softly. I don't answer right away. Yes, I say at last. How did she get there? Ruby asks. She had a friend, I say. A friend who made a promise. How? It takes a long time, but finally Ruby returns to her sleep. Ivan, Bob whispers. Yawning. What you said about the zoo. How are you going to do it? Suddenly I feel as if I could sleep for 1,000 days. I don't know, I admit. You'll think of something, Bob says confidently, his voice trailing off in his eye as his eyes close. What if I don't? I ask. But Bob is already asleep. His little feet dance, and I know he's running in his dream. Remembering. Bob and Ruby sleep on. I don't sleep. I think about the promise I made to Stella and the pictures I've made for Ruby, and I remember. I remember it all. What they did. We were clinging to our mother, my sister and I, when the humans killed her. They shot my father next. Then they chopped off their hands, their feet, their heads. Now, good thought, guys and girls. Something else to buy. There is a cluttered, musty store near my cage. They sell an ashtray there. It is made from the hand of a gorilla. So Ivan's having a couple different things going on in his mind right now, and he's not really sure what's going to happen. And he's thinking of things that happened in that gorilla hand ashtray. Most likely is ceramic and not from an actual gorilla's hand. Okay? So I have some questions probably to answer. Here it says, right, I can describe the moods of different events of the story and use colors to represent those moods. Right? Here's a piece. I have been in my domain for 9,855 days alone. I tried not to dwell on it. Still, it's hard to stay upbeat. So then, what do you think the mood is? And what's your thinking as to why? Okay? I love reading with you, and we will read lesson 10 soon, and it will start a new unit.